Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. The more I think of the debate the other day, the more frustrated I get at some missed opportunities from the president, as we've talked about. But also the more ticked off I get at Chris Wallace. What the heck was some of this stuff? This is the one that's getting all the attention here. Now, again, Trump's not the most articulate person. He could have done better with this, no doubt about it. But what even is this question? Why are you even doing this, Chris Wallace? Why are you even bringing this up? Here it is.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
It's a trick, it's a setup. So, of course, the obvious point is, why not ask Biden to condemn Antifa? Now, to be sort of fair, he did kind of. This is the equivalent question that he gave to Biden. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this. Bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you'd stop the days and months of violence in Portland? Like, what a weird way to say, will you condemn Antifa? Why not just say, will you condemn Antifa? Right? He did that with Trump. Will you condemn white supremacy? Very simple question, right? But with Biden, it was this like bulky, weird, like hypothetical of, well, have you done this specific thing? And it's such an easy layup for Biden to say, well, no, I'm not in office. But for Trump, very specific, will you condemn white supremacists? And Trump's like, well, first of all, Trump said, sure. But Trump's like, well, what are you talking about? I don't know what these white supremacist groups are. Who are you talking about here?
As we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically
that, but
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his FBI. FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in your administration
bad.
tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous radical
gentlemen,
group.
we're now.
And the whole thing's a setup. The whole thing is a setup from the media. There's no reason to even ask that ridiculous question. And here's why they do it. The media can't ignore the violence and the riots from the left in our cities and more in residential areas. They can't deny it, right? At first they denied it, but now they can't deny it. And then that's why you get CNN headlines like this, where they call it mostly peaceful protests, right? Right? It was like, what? Right? So they can't deny that these riots exist. So what they have to do now, because that's plan A, is plan A is to just, what riots? What are you even talking about, right? But it's like, everyone knows it. So the next best thing they can do is inject this idea of right-wing violence. So it sort of like evens out. Look at this, all this left wing, there's all this right wing. Bill O'Reilly did a great job doing this yesterday on his show. And he talked about how there's been less than 10 Proud Boys have been arrested at different things. And tens of thousands of Antifa people across the entire country. That's an order of magnitude different. It doesn't even make any sense to even think about comparing the two. But the media has to make them out to be the equivalent, because then they cancel each other out. Right? And then to justify that, or to prove that the white supremacists are a big problem here, they make the president condemn it. Like, it's not a thing. When they ask the president about it, it gives the Proud Boys legitimacy, and it gives their made-up narrative credibility. It's all a setup. Who's ever heard of the Proud Boys before? No one's ever heard of them. Sounds like some LGBT group. Proud Boy. Like, what do we? Chris Wallace gave them instant credibility. that they never had before. There's nothing President Trump could have ever said. You know, everyone talks about Trump's dog whistles in support of these white supremacists. There's nothing President Trump could have ever done that would have legitimized or benefited the Proud Boys more than Chris Wallace bringing them up in a presidential debate. And then, you know, Trump asks, because Wallace wouldn't, but Trump asked Biden if he condemns Antifa. And Biden said Antifa is an idea. Did you catch that? An idea? And this is, you can barely hear it over the crosstalk, but Trump said, yeah, getting hit in the head with a baseball bat's an idea. But the FBI director, he did not say that Antifa is an idea. The FBI director, it was like 2 weeks ago, said Antifa is an ideology. That's different than calling it an idea. By calling it an idea, that makes it seem like it's a figment of our imagination. Like it doesn't really exist in real life. There's nothing tangible about it. It's just an idea. It exists all right. You've been seeing it in cities all across the country. I like this tweet. Pretending a handful of basement dwellers pose some existential threat to America, while entire city blocks and hundreds of businesses were destroyed by Black Lives Matter, Antifa looters, and arsonists, not to mention dozens of murders, is some all-time media gaslighting. And that's what we're seeing right now. And Trump knows. He can smell it from a mile away. It's all a setup. This is Jesse Kelly. He said, I can't believe how many on the right will still walk blindly into the leftist trap of denounce racism. My word, we let them pick the game, the rules, the field, and the refs, and then wonder why we always lose. It's pathetic. Media, do you denounce racism? The Republicans should respond, oh, are you still torturing and murdering puppies? Heard you do that a lot. Why do you murder puppies? Just stop doing that. My word, that's how it's done, GOP, learn. This is proof that it's all a setup. Trump was asked the same thing in a debate in 2016. And not to mention he's denounced it 1,000 times before, but he was asked the same thing in a debate in 2016, moderated by Chris Wallace.
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. I've been doing it now for 2 weeks. You're probably about the 18th person that's asked me the question. It was very clear. That question was also talked about in the form of groups. I want to know, which groups are you talking about? You have to tell me which groups. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow. And by the way, if you look on my Twitter account, almost immediately after the program, they were disavowed again. You know, it's amazing. When I do something on Twitter, everybody picks it up, goes all over the place. But when I did this one, nobody ever picks it up. Take a look at my Twitter account.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so he's done it a million times. And that was better than 2 nights ago, there's no doubt about it. But Chris Wallace is still asking him this ridiculous question. So my answer would be, if I was advising the president or whatever, I'd say white supremacists in America, the Klan. You don't even mention the Proud Boys. They're it's so insignificant, right? All these white supremacist groups are. The Klan. But say, yeah, Klan, by the way, who have way more in common with the far left than conservatives. White supremacists have way more in common than the far left than they do with conservatives. Because both believe that you should be defined by your race and not the content of your character. They both believe in the supremacy of a race over another. But yeah, white supremacists and Antifa, I condemn them both because they're very similar to each other, more similar than they'd like to admit. But if they sat down together, they'd realize that they're both the same toxic ideology, and it's un-American, and I condemn it entirely in every way. Your turn, Joe. So there's a million better ways to do it than even what I just did there. But the whole point here is Trump knows it's a setup. Guys, we have that tweet of Richard Spencer here just to prove that these guys are the same. And we've played the comedy bit before by Ryan Long with the woke and the racist guy and how they're going back and forth about how they both agree on the same thing. But this is Kendi at the bottom. He's the guy who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. His ideology has infiltrated your school, your work. This is the whole anti-racist guy. And he talked about how Amy Barrett adopting black kids is colonizing them, the savage, blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. And then Richard Spencer, the neo-Nazi, wrote Not Wrong. They're the same. Those two people are the same. But But it's all a trick. Same thing, the question was asked like a week or so ago about conceding the election to the president. And the question was, win, lose, or draw, will you commit here today for a peaceful transfer of power after the election? And Trump, he didn't buy it. He didn't bite. Because it's like, first of all, draw? What's a draw? What are you talking about, a draw? Win, lose, or draw? And then what if I win? I'm not going to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if I win. It's a stupid gotcha question. Don't play their game. And Trump smells it coming from a mile away. Coming up next, and this is why I get so again, that's like a mix of frustration at Trump, you should have done that a little better, but stupid media, right? That I get more frustrated at. And the fact that Chris Wallace did that and many other things, called it racial insensitivity training, give me a break, Wallace. By the way, I predict that Trump broke Wallace. We'll see. You'll see how Wallace handles his move forward. But the fact that Chris Wallace brought up the Charlottesville hoax is so mind-boggling to me. It's a Biden campaign tactic. And Chris Wallace brought it up. So we got to take a minute here to break down the whole Charlottesville hoax so that I know you don't fall for it, but so no one you know ever falls for it ever again. This is right up there with the police in Louisville got the wrong house with Breonna Taylor. People still think that, and people still think this very fine people hoax is true. We'll do the quick of it next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I'm a little annoyed that we live in a country where we need to do this again. I'm annoyed that Chris Wallace would bring this up in the debate, the Charlottesville hoax. And I'm annoyed that we have to take a few minutes to debunk this, but I don't want anyone you know to ever fall for this stupid hoax again. Here's the story. The government of Charlottesville decided to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee that was downtown. Some good, very fine people like you and me wanted the statue to stay. Okay, great. Then some good, very fine people protested because they wanted the statue to come down. This was a genuine, fine, normal debate to have. Should the statue go? Should the statue stay? Some people went and said, oh, I want the statue to stay. Some people went and said, oh, I want the statue to come down. And that was it. And then everyone went home. Then some neo-Nazis showed up with their torches and everything. And then Antifa counter-idiots showed up and they started fighting with each other. Okay? So there's four groups. There's four groups in play here. Listen to these comments from the president at the time. It is perfectly clear which of these four groups he's referring to at any particular time in this impromptu press conference. Right? Particularly when he says very fine people. It could not be more clear about who he is referring to. But the media has intentionally, and Biden's campaign and Chris Wallace have intentionally read the absolute worst analysis you possibly could on this to continue this in the narrative for now, 3 years later. Here's the full of it. It's 3 minutes. It's not tricky to follow, even though many people refuse to. Here it is.
You putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
It's on both sides, sir. You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Kill the person. Heather hired Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group. Excuse me. I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
White nationalists then?
Well, no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now, we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
The press is treated unfairly, sir. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly?
No.
I just didn't understand what you were saying.
No. There were people in that rally, and I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day, it looked like they had some rough, bad people, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest because, you know, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit.
So, said, I'm talking about the I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. They should be condemned totally. Did you hear this part? He said there are people other than the neo-Nazis who the press has treated unfairly. And that reporter at the end goes, are you saying the press is treating neo-Nazis unfairly? No. I feel like I've used the word idiot. I don't care. I don't like the word idiot that much. No, you idiot! I just said people other than the neo-Nazis 6 seconds ago. Oh, you say that we treat the neo-Nazis unfairly? What you heard right there for 3 minutes is a perfectly acceptable step. Now I'll give it. I said before the clip, and this is a little off. I said he couldn't have been more clear. That's not true. Could have been more clear. Could have brought out charts and picture evidence of everything and laid out a case like he's in front of the Supreme Court or something. I guess he could have been more clear, but it was perfectly sufficiently clear to anyone with honesty and good intentions, as opposed to hearing whatever you want to hear. Oh, you think we're treating neo-Nazis unfairly? He said you have good people who wanted the statue to stand up, and you had to stay up, and you had bad people who wanted the statue to stay up. He also said you had good people who want the statue to come down, hence the very fine people on both sides. It's a compliment, right, to a group of people who wanted to tear a statue down, right? It's a compliment, good, very good. And you have very bad people who wanted the statue to come down, Antifa. What are we doing here? If you don't want to hear what is clear as day right there, then you've just decided you don't want to hear it. You've decided that. And the media keeps intentionally bringing this up from 2017. It's a total lie. And Chris Wallace brought it up. Chris Wallace knows. So again, I can't express it enough. If you don't see what Trump did there, then you are intentionally choosing not to. And I understand Trump's not the most articulate person in the world, but that was clear enough. And Biden threw a bunch of them out, right? The Russian bounty hoax, the soldier, loser, sucker hoax. And it was Chris Wallace who brought the Charlottesville hoax. So stupid. This is what the media does, though. I got a couple of examples here. So this is during the debate 2 days ago. Watch how Biden misinterprets this line. Here it is.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that.
Okay, so this is, Biden has made that point before. Biden did. This is him on MSNBC the other day.
I had a quote here from Kellyanne Conway. She said, the more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, it's better for us. It's a very clear choice it presents for us.
Okay. So here's what they're doing with this. Biden is saying that Kellyanne Conway and the president, by extension, are saying that chaos is better for Republicans. So let's fuel it. Let's keep it going. Let's encourage the Proud Boys to come out and keep the riots going, right? And the point of that is to Joe Biden trying to prove bad motives, bad intent, that this is all really Trump's fault, that if he could unite the country, he would, but he's not. Because as Kellyanne Conway said, the more riots there are, the better it is for us, okay? What did she really say? Here it is.
I also noticed there was a quote today from a restaurateur in Wisconsin saying, are you protesters trying to get Donald Trump reelected? He knows, full stop, and I guess Mayor Pete knows, full stop, that the more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, the better it is for the very clear choice on who's best on public safety.
See the difference there? She was quoting someone else who said, don't these far left people get it? What are you guys doing? You're helping us. That's very different than conservatives cheering this on, or even conservatives like doing it. That's the whole connection with the Proud Boys that they're trying to make, that like the white supremacists are actually the ones who are burning things down as some sort of like false flag thing or whatever, right? But that's she's quoting another person, another conservative, saying, hey, you far left rioters, right? You people who are forcing people in restaurants to raise their fists in the air in support of Black Lives Matter. You're Trump's get out the vote team. What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? You're helping our side. But Biden spun it around, and the media spun it around to make it seem like Trump is cheering on the violence or even stoking it or creating it. I'll give you another one. This is a sillier example, but it's a little more clear. And it's a clear example of you can hear whatever you want to hear. This is Eric Trump. So I saw the other day these headlines that Eric Trump said he's part of the gay community. Okay? Eric Trump came out as gay, said he's a part of the gay community. So this is on Fox and Friends, and what the host there, Ainsley, is doing, she's quoting the New York Times article. I don't think we talked about it here. We talked about it on the radio. It's a New York Times article by Bret Stephens about a gay woman in New York City who doesn't fit the demographic of a Trump supporter, but here's all the reasons why this gay woman is indeed supporting President Trump. So that's the build up to this, and here it is.
There are a lot of people that might be voting for your dad that aren't admitting it. And
it was Bret Stephens, who's been a critic of your dad, who wrote the editorial.
So are you counting on this person, on the secret voter?
Ainsley, that person's there. I'm telling you, I see it every day. The LGBT community, they are incredible. And you should see how they've come out in full force for my father every single day. I'm part of that community, and we love the man. And thank you for protecting our neighborhoods, and thank you for protecting our cities.
See what he did? Clearly, he was quoting some gay people that he's come in contact with who are supporting Trump. He wasn't saying, I'm part of the gay community. He was saying, I see people all the time who say, I'm part of the gay community and we love Trump, right? That's so clear. But it doesn't stop people from just making up whatever they want, hearing whatever they want to hear. And to put it, I'm putting it as nicely as possible, as generously as possible. It's people are assuming the absolute worst interpretation possibly conceivable. But it's a lot of just making stuff up too. It's a terrible thing how it works these days. And this is all, comparative foolishness. But what are we going to do when election day comes? I've heard people say also, it's going to get wrapped up in the Supreme Court. But who's to say that people are going to be like, oh, okay, the Supreme Court. Let's say the Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump when it comes to election night, with Amy Coney Barrett on it. You think the left is going to be like, well, the Supreme Court has spoken. All is well. Just make up whatever you want. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. One of the first people I thought of in the debate yesterday was Joe Concha. He's a media reporter at The Hill, and I wanted to get his take on just the whole thing in general. Joe, how are you, brother?
Michael, how are you?
Good, brother. I'm glad you're here. So, big picture, do debates matter, or is this something that people like you and me in the bubble just like to obsess over? Like, how does this play to the most of the country?
I think if we look at the 2016 playbook, Mike, and remember Donald Trump embarrassed himself in the first debate, and he shouldn't be on the same stage as Hillary Clinton. I went back and looked at the news clips, and they declared that he'd lost all three of those debates. And what Hillary Clinton got for winning those debates was a one-way trip back to Chappaqua and a year's worth of rice-a-roni. In other words, do they matter? I don't know. I mean, I guess they mattered in '76 where Ford said there was no Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe. That seemed to be the beginning of the end for him. And Reagan had some good debates against Carter and Mondale that seemed to turn those races around. But that was before cable news, before social media, and before the current environment that we're in. So I don't think one Trump voter, Mike, actually said, you know what, after watching that, I don't think I'm going to vote for that guy. They liked the fight. Maybe they didn't like the interruptions, but they'd rather have a fighter than somebody who's tepid or passive. I think Biden did lose voters, however. I think he lost some on the left flank of the Democratic Party by saying, no, I don't agree with the Green New Deal. What are you talking about? When it's on his website, when he said that Antifa is only an idea, when he said there was no pact with Bernie Sanders, all of those things did not sit well with the Bernie bros. So if he loses, not a lot of that wing, but enough where people don't go to Trump necessarily, but stay home in a close race, that could be the difference. So I think that's the story everybody's missing right now, Mike.
I wonder this undecided voter, like, who is this person? Are they really undecided, or they just want attention?
I think they're undecided about Trump, mainly. I think in the case of President Trump, there are some people, and I'll mention my wife. I guess I have no problem with that. She has a different last name, so we can protect the innocent here. But she says, look, I don't like the way President Trump acts. I don't like his personality. I think he tweets too much. I think he's rude. I think he's all these things. She says, but I look at the alternative, and she's kind of an apolitical person. She's a wife, 2 kids. She's a doctor. She's busy. But she says, but what I see going on with all these riots and all this unrest and, taxes are going to be raised and all these things. So I think the undecided are people that are wondering, do I put aside Trump's rhetoric and the way he acts, and do I look at results, or do I look at the contrast between if I have somebody like him in office and somebody like Joe Biden in office in terms of the way the country is going to be run? And I think that's where people are undecided. They grapple with, do I overcome my dislike for Trump's personality in order to vote for the guy who I probably agree with on a policy perspective? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's right. No, totally. And I wonder, did Trump do himself any favors yesterday, / can he, in the next 30 whatever days, overcome that hesitation that people have?
I think the news cycle moves so fast that what we think is the big story. Remember Trump's taxes, the New York Times story? That was going to be the beginning of the end, and the walls were closing in, and the noose was tightening. All those same analogies we hear over and over again, all these sayings. So, yeah, what is big today, in 2 days from now, could be totally different, or there could be some news event that changes everything. I mean, if you told me in January, after the State of the Union address, where I think Trump was at his all-time high in terms of economy going great, just got past impeachment, going into an election year, Democratic candidates, no one good on that side, and you told me, oh, a pandemic is coming, and that will upend everything, and then riots are coming over the summer. So I don't know, over the next 31 days, 80 things can happen where what we're talking about now is completely irrelevant, Mike.
Yeah, so if there's, let's say 30 whatever days, there's like 31 more stories that have yet to come.
62.
That could.
Yeah, there's like 2 a day.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what do you think about, or what's going to be the aftermath of Chris Wallace? I have a feeling that Trump broke Chris Wallace, and I don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. But what the heck happened there?
I try to think of any moderator, anybody in journalism that they could have put in there and could have controlled that situation. I mean, it was difficult. The issue that Trump supporters have with Wallace is that he interrupted President Trump 76 times and Joe Biden only 15 times. And there was one very telling point in that debate where Trump became the moderator, in essence, in asking Joe Biden, okay, who's on your Supreme Court list? Are you going to abolish the filibuster? Are you going to pack the courts? And Biden is just looking down, almost like a boxer, like, is that bell going to ring? and the bell rang where Wallace said, okay, I'm sorry, we're out of time. We have to move on. That was a telling moment where I thought that I get you got to stay in the rails and there's only so much time for each segment. But I think you have to know as a moderator, that's a big moment. And maybe I should step in and say, Mr. Vice President, will you stack the courts? And he has yet to answer that question, Joe Biden. I think he thinks he could go 31 days without answering it. And given what his press, the press that follows him, the questions that he get asked, like I saw during his press conference yesterday, which I believe one was, do you call it chocolate chip mint or mint chocolate chip? That's the sort of thing that Biden may be able to get away with. But I would hope in the second debate, some audience member, because that's a town hall debate, asks, are you going to stack the courts? Are you going to abolish the filibuster? I want to see how he answers, Mike.
Yeah, Chris Wallace, he jumped in maybe even 2 times, if I can remember, to save Biden. And what was that? Especially because he was the guy who said, I want to be invisible in this debate, and he could not have been more visible. And I'd argue there was paradoxically too much control, or at least too much attempt of control, as opposed to just letting him go. Don't you think letting him go, they would have kind of found a vibe and been able to have more of an authentic conversation?
I think we got to get Joe Rogan involved here, Mike, to be honest with you. I like what he has to do in terms of, or his proposal, which is, okay, we're going to go 3 hours, no commercials, and we're just going to have the candidates go back and forth. No time limits, no, here are the topics we're going to talk about. We make it a conversation. Yeah. I think that would definitely favor President Trump, because Joe Biden seems to want the clock to expire during these arguments, because he's trying to walk this tightrope of appeasing the left wing like we talked about. And, oh, by the way, Pennsylvania and Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, on that independent you've always known. So hopefully the town hall goes better, because you'll have the audience asking questions. The moderator really isn't involved too much with that one, even though I shouldn't say that, because it was Candy Crowley in 2012 during a town hall debate that stepped in to fact check Mitt Romney, changed the entire debate. And you could say the trajectory of that entire election, when she said that Romney was wrong to say that that Obama said that he said it was an act of terror in terms of Benghazi. And then only after the debate, when almost no one's watching, she said, yeah, Romney was right in the main. So you don't want to fact check during these debates too much, because it could lead to a Candy Crowley type of moment.
Wow, amazing. So I don't think Rogan's going to happen this go around. Although, would you tell President Trump that he should go on Joe Rogan for 4 hours, or no?
He's agreed to it. He said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll go.
But would he even just do it? What if it was just him and what if it was just him and Joe Rogan, no Biden?
Then you don't have a contrast, right? And Rogan isn't exactly a conservative. He's not going to CPAC anytime soon. He supported Bernie Sanders. Yeah. So you'd be getting questions from that angle, but Rogan hates Biden too. So yeah, I think without Biden,
I think you should do it anyway.
Like but do you think honeymoon without your wife?
Big picture though. So let's say Rogan or like that concept doesn't happen this go around. Are we ever going to see an end to this ridiculous, archaic format of big stage, 2 podiums, 2 minutes, 1 minute rebuttal, cut off, move on? Like, what is this relic that we pretend is relevant at all?
Made for TV. It's traditional. It's the way we've always done it since 1980. 1980, I'd hate to say, that was when Empire Strikes Back came out. That was 40 years ago. Maybe time to think it up a little bit and just let them, and forget the time restraints. They drive me crazy. Even during the primaries, you only had 30 seconds to give an answer to, how would you fix healthcare? I'm pretty sure you can't answer that in 30 seconds. So yeah, I would just let them go longer, less topics, right? We didn't have to get to 7 topics on Tuesday night. I think 4 are the only ones that matter really to most voters, right? It's probably COVID, it's violence in American cities, it's the economy, and then immigration perhaps, or China. I think if you just went with those 4 topics, you have a lot more time to explore.
What's keeping it the way it is?
The Commission on Presidential Debates has been putting together these formats since 1976, I believe, is when they came into existence. I could be wrong on that. So fact checkers, please go easy on me on that. But they've been around for a long time. So until they are told, okay, I think you're done here, then some other sort of entity has to come in to decide how these debates are going to go. And perhaps it could be a negotiation between Democrats and Republicans from each campaign, but they're not going anywhere. I mean, the establishment is the establishment. The swamp is the swamp. And, it would have to take, a Herculean effort in order to do that. And I can't say Herculean, apparently. I can. There we go.
Hopefully we've hit rock bottom. I think we need to hit a rock bottom before we can really think about changing it. I hope we've hit it. Okay, Joe, let me throw it to you. We got like 2 minutes or so. Anything else we need to keep an eye out for? You can either the debate from the past that you want to comment on or something coming up.
Okay. I assume this is edited, hopefully. No? We're live?
No, it's all you.
Oh, great. Okay. Let's see. What else can we keep an eye on going forward? Well, Mike, I honestly think that the Biden campaign and Kamala Harris are going to continue doing what they're doing, which is as few interviews, press conferences, or at least any sort of interviews with the type of folks that are going to actually ask questions to Kamala Harris, like, hey, you set up a bail fund for protesters, rioters in Minneapolis. And then one protester got out and sexually assaulted an 8-year-old girl. Any thoughts on that type of thing, right? Or on Joe Biden in terms of fracking. You've gone saying you're going to ban it and then you're not, or we're not going to have any more coal producing plants. I just would love Tim Russert to somehow be resurrected in some way, shape, or form, because all he used to do, it's a very simple interviewing concept, actually, on Meet the Press. He would play back a quote to the person he's interviewing and ask them to defend themselves on the quote, particularly if they had contradicted themselves since. We just don't see that anymore. It's basic 101 journalism. And I'll leave you with these two stats. 86% of the American people believe that the media is biased. This is according to Gallup. This was a poll that was just done last month. I'd love to meet the 14%, by the way, have a Harvey Wallbanger with those people. Say, no, it's not biased. What are you talking about? But 84%, Mike, believe that the media bears the blame for divide in this country, right? So when you see these riots and these protests, and then you turn on CNN, you see mostly peaceful protests, and then you see a fire in a building burning behind them, and then they cite actually a study that says 93% of all protests were actually peaceful. Yeah, you know what? Serial killers are 93% peaceful also. Think of all the people they don't kill. Look at it that way. It's a stupid argument. So, yeah, I think going forward, the media will only continue to divide this country. They picked a side at this point and they push one narrative, and that's very dangerous. I just love to see more people just play the contrarian once in a while and actually just give their opinions and tell people what they should hear instead of what they want to hear. That's all.
And I think the theme of the show before you came on is everyone's assuming the absolute worst assumption of anything that certainly Trump says, right? They're taking the worst possible interpretation of it and running with it. Do you have any thoughts on the I think it's a setup on the Charlottesville question? Why would Chris Wallace even bring that up? That was from 2017. What is that about?
Yeah, and people forget to read the transcript of what the president said, where he absolutely condemned neo-Nazis. He was clearly talking about, and this is an argument that we had even 3 years later, good people on both sides mean the argument around taking down statues. Do we just try to erase history, good, bad, or ugly, or do we preserve it? And there's split on that in terms of, you look at polls in terms of whether we take down statues or not. And everybody said, well, no, Trump was he was praising neo-Nazis. Trump's not an idiot. I mean, you think he's actually going to stand up there on national television to say that he praises neo-Nazis when, again, he allowed his daughter to marry a Jewish guy and raise the kid Jewish? That makes him a neo-Nazi, right? It's just so
what
stupid.
Is that? So why would Chris Wallace bring that up even?
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to ask then, therefore, if, all right, President Trump, you're going to condemn white supremacy, you have to turn to Joe Biden and say, condemn Antifa, condemn the violent wing of the Black Lives Matter movement that caused billions of dollars of damage and death across this country over the summer. All right, you have to ask both those candidates the same question in terms of the right and the left. And that's all people want. They want consistency, and Biden got a pass there, Mike.
Yeah, Wallace didn't do that. Joe Concha, The Hill, where should we follow you, Joe?
At Joe Concha TV, which I'm on right now, actually, the first. And at Joe Concha TV, and I give my NFL selections every Friday as well, in addition to media.
There you go. Wow. I appreciate you, Joe. We'll do it again. Thanks, brother.
All right, Mike. Good to see you.
Have a good day. I want to talk more about the debate format and the presidential debate committee. We'll talk about that coming up. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So Joe Concha just mentioned this, so I want to talk about this in a little more detail. I think this is important. This is Ben Domenech from Federalist. He said, the Commission on Presidential Debate is a relic. Its board contains mostly people born in the 1930s and 40s. It is the reason there's no internet-based debates. Its executive director has led it since the beginning of, Its executive director has led it since before the end of the Cold War. It must end. The commission's approach creates debates that are unintelligible and with moderators who cannot effectively extract the truth. They're asking 1980s questions in a 1970s format. The chair of the Presidential Debate Committee is 81 years old. Like, what? I was gonna say, like, he grew up watching Nixon JFK debates. One of the guys on the board was appointed to the FCC by JFK. He's a JFK appointee who's in charge of the debates. And like, what are we doing? And who even decided 90 minutes? The Lincoln Douglas debates were 3 hours. But as Joe said, 90 minutes is made for TV. And then as David Reboy, who we had on yesterday, as he said, like, why do the moderators have to be someone out of the guild, the media guild? You know, like, get Joe Rogan there, get Charlemagne the God, get Mike Rowe, get someone outside of this bubble, get someone who's curious. Moderators need to be curious. They don't need ego. It's really the whole thing. The whole debate format needs to be just burned to the ground. Just kill it with fire and rebuild it. We got to go Antifa on the debate format is what I'm trying to say. Hopefully this is the last time we ever talk about Chris Wallace, quite frankly. I think Trump broke him. We'll see how he rebounds. I can't get over these two moments. I cannot, like, they need to be played again and seared in your memory. Here they are. Here's the first.
Almost nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
No, think about it. Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported you.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject.
Why? What do you mean? What do you mean you want to get back to the moderator's role? Why would Wallace save Biden when he's clearly on the ropes like that? What are you doing? I cannot fathom. Like, let that go. Let him go. Let him figure that out. Why do you feel the need to jump in, Mr. I want to be invisible? That was the other thing. Joe Concha talked about one of the examples. That was the other example that I couldn't think of at the time. Isn't that amazing? I'd like to jump in here and reclaim my... Why? Because you want to be the one to ask your precious questions? You want him to only answer your questions? Let him go back and forth. Why would you not let them talk back and forth? All right. And then there's this moment. This was the worst thing in the whole debate. I can't believe this isn't getting more play today. Here.
Mr. Vice President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself. But and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
Oh, that's a bad look. But you can see he laughed and then he's like, oh, well, it was about the economy and about, right? That was the end of it right there. That was the last straw, I think, for everybody, that this whole thing is just a ridiculous fool's errand. I got one more clip here.
Right. I have one final question for you,
sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question
because you answer that
because
question?
the question is
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment.
That was 28 seconds.
Keep yapping, man.
The people.
28 seconds. So Wallace asked the question, and for 28 seconds, Wallace at the end felt the need to take it back. That's all that he would let that moment sit. because Biden was on the ropes and struggling. What's the problem? If Trump wasn't even off topic, he was on topic. He was reinforcing the question. He re-asked the same question. Why would Wallace not keep that going? Oh, his precious format, right? Amazing. Now, all right, we're done with Chris Wallace. Hopefully we never talk about him ever again. Trump missed some easy layups, right? The question on taxes, his handling on COVID. I did an Instagram and a Facebook video yesterday. Just go to Slater Radio and did a video on all that. So no doubt there were some missed opportunities. And I think there were maybe too many interruptions. I have no problem with Trump pushing back, right? People are so sensitive about interruptions, right? Like Trump was violating a holy commandment, thou shalt not interrupt, when someone calls you Putin's puppy, right? You gotta sit there and take it until your time to talk. Like, I'm not that. But for Trump's own benefit, there were some times when Trump should have let Biden just keep talking and hang himself with his own rope. And Trump kind of jumped in maybe a little too quickly at times. But does that make sense today? I'm not like, oh, that's really rude of you to interrupt. Like, that's not it. It's for your own benefit. You probably should interrupt like 20% less. And could have been more concise on some issues and just let Biden blow it on others. But don't stress. I agree with Joe, I think, on this. I think we got like all hyper, like, this is it. Every incumbent president has done terrible on their first debate, including Barack Obama. Did awful against Mitt Romney on the first one. His campaign was freaking out. Trump will rein it in. And lucky for us, there's 2 more of these fun things. Tomorrow, our special, Dems plot to undo America. We're gonna talk about 3 things in particular. Court packing, the history of it, adding more people to the Supreme Court. We'll talk about the Democrats' desire to add states, the 53-state solution, they call it. And then the big one is to get rid of the Electoral College. It's all coming up on our special tomorrow. True story. Spread the word.